And as you'll find out in a few minutes when we go through the schedule of events for April, we are sponsoring several of the events that are taking place between the 8th and the 12th of April. And we do those in partnership with the National Park. I wanted to start out this morning and see if we can get a breakdown of where everybody has come in from today. Please raise your hand if you're from Appomattox, Appomattox County, town of Appomattox. Oh, many more this time. On the 10th, it was not as many. All right. Campbell County. Okay. Buckingham. Okay. Charlotte.
Yeah.
Okay. Nelson County. Amherst. Prince Edward. Okay. Bedford. All right. City of Lynchburg. Who did I miss? Where are you from?
I'm from Conley Springs, North Carolina.
Oh, Mom. Winner! Winner! Last time it was the gentleman from Alexandria who was the winner. Where are you from, sir?
Richmond.
Richmond. Ooh, that's close. No, I don't know. That's a long distance. Yes, sir.
Cumberland.
Okay. Anybody I miss? Yes, sir.
Spotsylvania County,
Oh,
Friends of the Wilderness Battlefield.
okay, so you know Zane.
Yep.
Okay, so what?
Franklin County.
Franklin. Okay, South Dakota. Anybody else? That's excellent. So we've got a really good mix of people coming in, which shows us that there's a lot of regional interest in what's going on here in Appomattox in April, this little shindig that we're having. Or, I don't know, we're not even going to begin to put a number on it.
Could be big.
It could be big. All right, so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to go over with you the schedule of events that are happening between the park and the foundation between the 8th and the 12th. We have a card. Who's got, you handing out the cards, Elisa?
No, it's put out a few more seats.
Okay.
I can get cards up.
So we're going to get some cards out to you that list what's happening. We're going to go through each of those events and tell you about that event so you have a better understanding of logistically what's going on here. Know that it's not just the park and the foundation hosting events. There are other entities. There are 89 separate events and programs scheduled for the week. What you're seeing are the ones that are from the park and the foundation, which is what we're recruiting volunteers for. Some of the other groups, the Historic Society, Museum of the Confederacy, the Cargill Price Museum, are recruiting their own volunteers separately. But we kind of have this feeling that the majority of the visitation is going to be in the national park. So that's why we're looking for help. Then what we're going to do is we're going to hand you out a sheet, and we're going to ask you to fill out your contact information at the top. And we're going to go through and describe to you 17 separate job titles, areas where you can assist us. We'll tell you what we're looking for in those areas, what kind of help. Is it something that's maybe better for someone who probably has mobility issues, who wants a job where you can sit, or somebody who wants a more active job? So we'll go through and break those down for you. What we ask then is before you leave here this morning, we'll try to get you out by 11, is that you indicate on here, circle the numbers of the ones that you are interested in. And you can select more than one. The group that came in on the 10th, most people selected 2 or 3 different things to do. But it's up to you what you're comfortable doing. Then what we do is I take this information back and I have a spreadsheet by job title. And anybody who's interested in working in the snack shop will be listed under that job title. The individual who is responsible for organizing that particular event will then contact you sometime during February or March to get all those people together to do training for that particular job title. So this is to orient you as to what's going on, let you select how you want to be involved, and then we'll get back together with you in February or March. So if you pick 2 or 3 different things to do, you will more than likely hear from 2 or 3 different people between the Park Service and the Foundation who are in charge of those particular jobs. And they will tell you when your training is going to be. You need to be trained to volunteer. We can't, because of the volume of visitation we're going to have, we can't have people just show up on the 10th and say, hey, can I help out? Because we do not have time to train you while we're on the ground running around with all the visitors. All right, so we'll want you to finish your training. Now, we had discussions amongst us, and I'll introduce Ernie Price and Elisa Holland, who are from the park. They'll be talking to you as well this morning. we had discussions amongst us as to how we indicate to our visitors that you are a trained volunteer who can assist them. So we did the usual, well, maybe we'll put them all in a nice volunteer t-shirt of some sort. And then reality hit, and Ernie's going to tell you at least 15 times today that next April it's going to be 65 and sunny the entire week. The reality is it could be like today, or it could be snowing. He says no. Okay. We're going with the mantra of 65 and sunny for the entire week. But if you're standing there in a t-shirt and it's like today, you're going to put a coat on. And then nobody's going to see your volunteer t-shirt to know that you're a trained person who can help. So the way we have solved this is we will have very bright vests, kind of a lime yellow bright vests. Then on the back it says NPS, National Park Service, volunteer, big letters. So when you come in to work, whatever you've signed up to do, you will put on one of those vests, and that immediately is going to indicate to our visitors, you are a person who is trained and able to assist them. When you leave at the end of your shift, you put the vest back in a box, and the next person who comes in can put it on, so that we have vests for everybody to use. The important thing to remember is we're not asking you to give up the entire week of April 8th through April 12th. We will individually schedule you based on your availability. And on the sheet that we hand out, if you have restrictions, if you're not going to be in town on the 10th, write that down. And on the spreadsheet in the comments section, I put that so that the person who calls you to do your training and scheduling knows you are not available on the 10th. If you only want to work 4-hour shifts, you make that known. You tell the person who calls you and does your training with you. Because when they finish your individual training for that job, they're going to produce a schedule. And you will have that schedule to work from for the 8th through the 12th, so you know where you're going to be and what time you're going to be there. And Ernie's going to go through with you the parking. So if you're scheduled to work at 9, don't show up at 8:55. Or don't try to leave your house at 8:55. It's not going to work. There's a little traffic here. So Ernie's going to go through with you about the busing system so that you know how you're going to get to where you're going to be working. All right? Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
We both come from an hour and a half away and riding together. Can we indicate that we want the same shift?
Absolutely.
Okay, yes.
Absolutely. And I had that on the 10th. I had a lot of couples write down, I want to work at the same time my husband's working. Not necessarily the same job, but if we're driving in and we're going to be here for 4 hours, let's drive in together. And that's smart, carpooling. Absolutely. So yeah, put that on the sheet that we hand out this morning.
Will you be setting up a carpooling list? Because I live out in Bedford, but I own a van.
You can do that when you go through your individual training. If you find that there are other people doing the jobs who are coming from the same area, perhaps you can all meet in Lynchburg and come in together or something. So when you get a call for your individual training, there are going to be 20 or more people in that training.
Set the schedule up.
Yeah, so when they set the schedule up, we can try to do that. All right? All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Ernie. Does everybody have one of these little rack cards? All right. Yes, ma'am. You need one? Okay. So you got it.
I just on my back.
They're kind of wandering around, I guess. Somebody's got them somewhere back there. All right.
If not, we'll make sure you get one here soon.
Yeah. Has everybody got one now? I think they're making their way to the back. Does anybody have a stack of them? Have they made their way to the back and you've got a stack of leftovers? No? Okay. Fine. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Ernie. He's going to go through the logistics of the events, transportation, and all those fun issues. And then we'll hand out this sheet and we'll let you pick out what you want to do. Okay?
After we explain what's all going on.
Everybody call.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You guys are all the way in the back. Can you hear me? It's a big room, lots of people. Excellent. And that is uplifting, absolutely inspiring. We thought that the first turnout 2 weeks ago was good, and it was. I think there's probably 80 people or so. I'm starting to think there's more in this room now than there were during the first training, and wow, that's all I can say. Just wow, it's awesome, and it's great, and we're going to need your help. You will hear the National Park Service uses something called an incident command team. So if I start seeing ICT, because we've been doing this for a long time, that's what it is. And these are people that come in. We're a very small park as national parks go. And so we need a lot of help to implement such a large event. Logistics, communication, law enforcement, all that stuff. And so this ICT has been helping us plan for over a year now. And they have a very technical way of talking about planning for the size of this event, because I think that's the number one question. How many people are coming for the event? And the ICT will tell you, and again, it's technical jargon, but I believe it's something like, it could be big. So you probably hear that from me a few times too. It's a great question, and there is no good answer. We were talking earlier this morning about it. Things like the weather could be a huge factor as to how many people come out on a given day. And as any, judging from where everybody's coming from, you know full well that Virginia in April is quite unpredictable. Just in my tenure at the park over the last 25 years, I've seen 2 April 9ths in the snow. I've seen plenty that were 75 and sunny. So I'm going to hope for the latter, but we're going to plan for the former. We're going to plan that it's going to be huge, lots of people, and the weather's not going to be great. And then, hopefully, then we'll be pleasantly surprised when it turns out to be better than that. We are going to go through the day by day. We've also tried to measure exactly how long a person can sit in a metal chair before it just becomes unbearable. So we're going to try to get below that time limit. But I do want to say a couple of overarching things about this whole event. If you're volunteering for the Friends group, for the park, any of this, keep in mind that we are all working as Appomattox. And we've got people coming from every state in the Union, lots of foreign countries. We already know. We've talked to these people. They're coming, and it really might be big. But when they come here to do this, they're coming here to engage in a moment, an opportunity, an experience. That's what they're looking for. And these visitors, more than likely, don't know and probably don't even necessarily care what is the Museum of the Confederacy, the Appomattox 1865 Foundation, the Carver Price Legacy Museum, the Appomattox Courthouse, National Historical Park, the town, the county, the Historical Society. They just want to know where they need to go to do what it is they want to do, to have the experience they want to have. So when we're working this event together, it's very important, no matter what you sign up to do and where you are, what day, what shift, whether it's the snack bar or at the McLean House or wherever, that you be equally familiar with the entire event. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're going to want you to do. When somebody from Indiana comes up and says, well, what time does the reenactment start? And you're volunteering for the National Park, the answer shouldn't be, oh, that's not us, that's the Historical Society. We don't know. That's not a good answer. We want everybody to know everything so that the Appomattox experience is good for everybody that comes here. So that's kind of an overarching message that I want to make sure we just set that tone from the beginning. The next thing I'd like to do is touch on some of the universal elements about the event itself. We'll get into the individual days, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. But there are certain things we should understand about the entire event. And as Sue said, probably another one of the top 5 questions is parking. Because it doesn't matter how great the event is that you're going to, if you can't get to it, it won't matter. Obviously, parking inside the national park, and really at any of the venues for the most part, is very small. And so we will be using a shuttling system to get people where they need to be. Now for the park, there will be remote parking lots on the east and west sides of the historic park. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have been to the village, been to the park, but the village that we talk about, the courthouse village, is about 200 or 300 acres that contains most of the buildings, the courthouse, the McLean House, etc. The park, though, is about 1,700 acres. It's about 3 miles along Highway 24, basically from Grant's headquarters to Lee's headquarters, crossing the river there in the middle. And when we say east and west of the park, we mean over by Lee's side and over by Grant's side, there will be remote parking. We only have about 75 parking spots in the traditional parking lot at the park. no one will be allowed to park in that little lot unless you have proper identification for handicapped accessibility parking. That's it. The Virginia Sesquicentennial Commission History Mobile will be parked there, and that will also be the drop-off and pickup for the shuttle system. That's what that lot's going to be. There'll be law enforcement there at Highway 24 coming into the park. Only buses and people with proper identification will be allowed to come in there. So when people come from Richmond or Franklin County or Nelson County, wherever, when they approach Appomattox to come to this event, one of the first things they're going to see is one of those big VDOT signs on the highway that they're using to come to Appomattox, which has got to be 46, 24, 26. And as they come in, they'll be directed into one of these two lots, east or west of the village. Once they get parked in that lot, then they'll be allowed to get onto a shuttle that will take them right down to the flagpole. That's what we call it, the flagpole, right there at the base of the hill at the historic village. And that's how they will get into the village. I think the next thing to talk about there, it may not be a top 3 question, but it's a top 10 question is, well, what about food? Once you get into the park and you've earned your way in, parking, shuttling, and lots of patience, you don't want to leave unless you're ready to leave for good. So there's going to be, it looks like 4 or possibly even 5 food vendors set up inside the national park. So you can eat while you're there. There'll be snacks. The Friends group is setting up snacks for prepackaged foods and drinks. There'll be full-blown meals. I already know there's going to be barbecue, I can tell you that. And more. There'll be some variety. So that's important to know. If you're planning to come in, you don't have to leave and come back if you get hungry. And I suppose the natural progression after that would be the more than 100 porta-johns that will also be in the park, strategically placed throughout the village.
Historical, of course. Right?
Yeah, historical porta-johns. Privies, outhouses. Those are very common questions, and we want that part to be understood. The other thing is, the number one question we're getting online through our website is, do I need tickets or reservations for any of this? And inside the national park, the answer is no. There are no tickets, no reservations required for anything in the national park. On top of that, we got permission to waive our entrance fee for the entire 5 days. That's logistics, because trying to charge people through this shuttle system would be very cumbersome. And thankfully, our big bosses heard our plea and agreed. And so from April the 8th through April the 12th, there will be no cost to visit the national park. However, because we want to know all the events, when somebody asks that question, are there tickets or reservations required, we need to understand that some of the events outside the national park do require reservations. For example, and I'm sure Sue will be talking about some of the Friends group activities that, due to space limitations, they require a reservation. They don't cost money. The Civil War Ball at the primary school, the Lantern Tour in the village. These are limited by space, so you still need a reservation even though they don't cost. The reenactment out at the industrial park by the Historical Society does have a cost. So these are the things we want to learn. We want to know when people ask us those questions what the answer is. But in the park, no entry fee that week. Any questions about that universal overarching stuff so far? Because what I'm going to do now, yes ma'am.
When the visitors come, are they going to be provided with a site map so they can see where the potties are and the food is and all that?
Yeah, there'll be a program booklet almost that will contain all kinds of overall information about the event, and there'll be every day will be featured in one of those pages that gives you a schedule of everything going on in the park that day. There will be some large, more ceremonial things, and we'll be getting into this in just a second. And there'll be some things that go on all the time, just constant programs and where they are. These are the 30-minute program types on a particular topic that if you're interested in it, be at this spot at this time and take it in. And so, yeah, there'll be an overall program for the whole event. Also, too, we'll be using, for lack of a better term, sandwich boards will be strategically placed throughout the village. And each morning, there's an entire schedule that will be laminated, big, oversized piece of paper, laminated, and posted on those sandwich boards. I'm pretty sure those will be at the parking lots where the shuttles pick up. They'll be in the village, and so people can constantly reference, oh, coming up at 10 o'clock is this thing, or 2 o'clock is that thing that I want to do. And as staff members, we'll have all that memorized, and we'll just know, yep, this is it. When people get off the shuttle, what's next? Well, coming up at 1 o'clock, you got this and that, and at 2 o'clock, there's this big thing over here, you know, etc. So yes, there'll definitely be programs and maps. Our park brochure actually contains a map of the whole village, and I'm sure that'll be popular while people are there. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm hoping for a very large response from the whole country. Is 4 or 5 food vendors all we're gonna?
Well, that's all that's going to be in the park.
Okay.
All the other events, most of them at least, are going to also have food vendors. So wherever somebody goes, the industrial park for the reenactment, I know, for example, will also have food vending. We've got it. The Museum of the Confederacy will have food vending. So you're right. If that was all for the whole event, that wouldn't be enough. But when you add up all the vendors for all the events, it's quite a bit. Quite a bit. Good question. Yes, sir.
So is the shuttle service solely for the parking for the national park, or is it the hub for the other events?
It definitely is. There are definitely going to be buses just for the national park running all the time. The county and the town are also working on possibilities, so I don't want to go too far here and make a promise that I certainly can't keep, but we recognize that there are times when it would be nice if the shuttle's connected to the reenactment, like on Saturday, which is going to be a big day for reenactment, or even around the town and the other sites. And I don't want to commit to any of that. I can tell you it's being talked about. We recognize that some people might want to park and then just be able to shuttle around. But it's an interesting balance, because you also don't want to create a shuttle system that's so complicated that nobody can understand it. And we saw a little bit of that at Gettysburg, frankly. Great event, but a complicated shuttle system. So we're trying to balance that. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
And so will the volunteers be given such like a master schedule of all events?
Oh, yes, indeed. In fact, right now, if you got a smartphone or when you get home, if you go to appomattox150th.com, appomattox150th.com.
It's on the card that you have, too,
Yep.
at the back and the bottom.
That is a website that the county administers, but all of the partners that I mentioned before contribute to that site. So that is, even right now, the comprehensive list of all the programs. We have the national park stuff on the national park website, but the appomattox150th.com is a great place to send people or to go yourself if you want to see a breakdown. If you're thinking in your personal schedule, hey, I can't volunteer on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but Saturday's a good day for me, go on that website right now and see all the events that are going on that Saturday. It may continue to be refined, but I would say that list is probably 90% solid. It may grow in more detail, but even now, it'll give you a very solid basis for what's happening on that day. Yes, sir.
Will volunteers and the public, for that matter, be allowed to bring backpacks or a carry bag, like snacks, water, rain gear?
In the national park, yes, sir. Yeah, there'll be no restrictions on that. Yes.
One thing I noticed on the schedule, I printed it out
Right.
a few days ago, is that some events are held multiple times, so there's not just one stacking of the arms ceremony.
Very good, yeah.
One surrender of lead.
Yeah, the gentleman was talking about, he noticed on the comprehensive schedule on appomattox150th.com that there are certain events that repeat themselves, and that is by design. And I think with that, I will transition into the day by day. That metal chair is speaking to me in the back. So let's get on with the dates. 5 days, April 8th through 12th. The basis for what we're doing in the National Park and with the Friends Group, all these events that we're focusing on now. So if you volunteer through this sheet of paper that we're talking about now, you're volunteering for the Park Service or for the Friends Group for our events. So those are the ones we're going to cover right now. 8th through the 12th. The premise of the design of this commemoration, and by the way, that is a very important piece of lingo that we have to adopt. If you're going to be part of this team, it's a commemoration, not a celebration. It's a subtle thing, I know, but we've learned over the last 5 years during all these 150ths, it's a commemoration because it means lots of different things to lots of different people. We're not here to assign value, we're here to mark the occasion. So 5 days of commemoration. And the basis is, for the Park Service and the Friends Group, is we want to make sure that we're recognizing what we call real-time events. Those are the 5 days that the most critical historical things happen in and around Appomattox that lead to the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia and Confederate soldiers leaving to go home, and all that comes with that history. April the 8th is a Wednesday. April the 8th is important because of the Battle of Appomattox Station. Of the 5 days, this is one of the lighter days historically. You should never say that about a battle, so I'm sensitive to that. But you'll see what I mean when we talk about the 9th and the 12th and even the 10th. The 8th, from a commemoration standpoint, is fairly light. But we like that because that means on the 8th, we also view it as a little bit of a dry run. All of you that are working these different stations and all of us, this is new for us too. We might know the park, but we're not used to having this many people at one time. This gives us a chance to make sure that our stations are staffed properly, that everything's running properly, that the communications are working before the big show on the 9th. Because we got a lot of people in the Park Service that are coming in from Fredericksburg, Richmond, Petersburg, Gettysburg, all kinds of places coming in to help us. And so this gives them a chance too to get grounded at their station and be ready for the 9th on the 8th. It also helps that the real-time event on the 8th doesn't occur until the end of the day. So we'll be set up all morning. The shuttles will be running on the 8th. They get to work their kinks out too. But you'll see on the schedule that in the afternoon of the 8th, there's a 3-phase program that will mark the progression of the Battle of Appomattox Station. And it starts actually downtown at Liberty Baptist Church. That's phase 1, which is very close to the railroad tracks and what would have been known as Appomattox Station, which was really a platform. It was not a full-blown station in 1865. It was called Appomattox Station, and that's where the Confederate trains that were there with food, waiting to feed the Army of Northern Virginia, are captured by a division of Federal Cavalry under George Custer. And that battle starts out, and we've got first phase, 3:30. At Liberty Baptist Church, Chris Calkins, retired National Park Service, current site manager at Sailors Creek State Park Battlefield. He'll be leading that program. And again, that's real time, late afternoon. Phase 2, Sue, would you want to share phase 2? Or?
Phase 2 takes place at the Appomattox Station Battlefield, which is a property that is now controlled by the Appomattox 1865 Foundation. And it will open in April for the first time in 150 years. We will actually be welcoming visitors to the site of that particular battle. What makes it important in history is in 4 years of Civil War, it's the only battle of cavalry against artillery. There's no infantry involved in this particular battle. There are about 100 pieces of artillery from the Confederate side versus the cavalry, so it's a very unique battle. It's also the battle that sets up the surrender the next morning, or the next afternoon, April 9th, in the courthouse. So we're going to, for the first time, actually welcome visitors to the battlefield, so we're all very excited about that.
So that's phase 2. That begins at 5? 5? 5? Yeah. And that will also be Chris Calkins and Patrick Schroeder, the historian from the National Park. They'll be there recounting that battle, giving you a lay of the land, what you can see, where the lines were, and so forth. The final phase, phase 3, is actually in the historic park, in the national park. So there, that's when and that's what happened. The battle started down closer to the tracks, right behind Carver Price, and over at the old Jameson trucking lot, which is now the battlefield that the Friends Group now owns. And then it progressed. Once the Confederates were retreating, some of the Confederates that weren't captured at the core of the battlefield, phase 2, fall back in toward the village, and there's a portion of the Federal Cavalry that will follow them into the village, so the battle spills into the village after dark. And in reality, when it happened in the dark, on the night of April the 8th, late afternoon, evening of the 8th. So phase 3 will be in the village. And Patrick Schroeder, once again, will be guiding us through that final phase of the battle. There are casualties there. There are soldiers killed in the village on the night of the 8th. I'll be sharing some of those stories. But as Sue said, the real important thing here is what it does to set the stage for the morning of April the 9th. So April the 8th, we'll be open late. The sun sets at around 7:30 these 5 days in question. And so when we are open late, there'll be lighting at all the shuttle stops to get people in and out, even in the dark. That'll happen. Yes, ma'am?
So how would visitors progress through these 3 phases?
Yes, shuttles will be available to assist with getting people to these 3 phases. Once again, the hard part is we don't know how many people there will be. So the shuttle system will be in place on the 8th, and once these 3 phases start, will be used to get people from, if you want to do all 3 phases, you can start in phase 1, ride the shuttle, and the shuttle will come back. Others could try to drive to an individual phase, but parking's going to be limited. That's going to be risky. So if you want to do it all, I would just do it all with the shuttle. Okay, that's the 8th, fairly brief. The big day is the 9th. We're going to open early on the 9th. In fact, the shuttles will start running at 5:30 in the morning on April the 9th, in the dark. So there'll be lighting. So if you sign up for the 9th, be careful. But it's because it's real time. The battle opened at about 7:30 on the morning of the 9th, on the western side of the village, in the historic park, just west of the McLean House. So in order to get lots of people in place by 7:30, the shuttle's got to start early. And when people ask you, what should I do to do this event or that event, always tell them, allow time. As Sue said, if the program's at 7:30, don't drive to Appomattox at 7 o'clock and think you're going to be on the spot at 7:30 for the program you want to see. You got to park and shuttle, get in, so allow that time. And I wish I could tell you exactly how much time that's going to take, but I think the reality is there are certain peak moments where the shuttle system is going to be taxed, and other times when it's not bad. We just have to be patient. And the morning of the 9th is one of those times where we expect a lot of people to be coming in. Some of them may be coming in for the battle program, which is 7:30 to 10:30 on the morning of the 9th. Here, we will have the reenactors that are inside the national park. Point of clarification. There are about 900 reenactors that will be in the national park over the course of the 5 days. Not to be confused with the many more reenactors that will be over at the industrial park for the reenactment. We don't do the reenactment in the national park. The Historical Society is doing that at the industrial park. But we do have reenactors in the park. Okay, so there's a difference there that is very confusing for people when you're just kind of looking at the schedule and not sure where is the reenactment. The reenactment's at the industrial park. But we will have reenactors in our park, in the historical park. They'll be doing firing demonstrations. There's artillery, there's cavalry, there's infantry. They will be setting the tone that morning. There'll be some firing going on there and at the Museum of the Confederacy, which, depending on the acoustics that day, is very audible from the park. So there'll be return artillery sounds coming from the west, from the Museum of the Confederacy, as it's going on in the park. Yes, ma'am?
And this one on this card, is that, which reenactment is that on this card?
Let me see which one it says. I gave up my last one. On the 9th.
7:30 to 10:30, is that?
Yeah, that's a real-time program. That's not a reenactment.
Okay.
That's just marking the exact spot at the exact time where the battle occurred.
Okay.
Now, our historian and others will be talking about the battle, telling folks, getting a lay of the land. This is where the Confederates were. This is where the Federals were. This is what happened. There'll be firing going on to set that tone, and I'll tell you why in a moment. There's going to be firing going on in the village, at the Museum of the Confederacy, from 7:30 to 10:30, but at 10:30, the guns go silent. That's when the battle's over. In fact, we're even orchestrating a crescendo of firing from about 10:15 to 10:30 to contrast the silence that's going to follow at 10:30. So the last shot's fired. I can already tell you that's going to be fired at the Museum of the Confederacy. We're not fighting them on that one. That shot's fired, and then there will be a white flag. And the fighting's over. And so we want to mark that moment. Again, that's what all this is about. It's about real-time moments. And all these thousands of people that want to come here, That's what they want. They want to be at that spot at that time. That's what's so significant about it. They can come to the park anytime. That's what's special about this. So once the fighting is over, there'll be a white flag presented to signify that. Ends about 10:30. Soon after that, there will be about a 70-piece orchestra that will start playing on the other side of the village at a large open field on the east side of the courthouse, in front of the Isbell House, if you know where that is. But it's a large field there in the village. There'll be a large stage set up on one side of that field. There's about 2,500 chairs, and then lots of open acreage beyond that, because we feel that there certainly could be more than 2,500 people. This is going to be the main stage event. That's what we call it. This is where your dignitaries show up, your politicians, your academics, your historians, to mark the occasion, to say a few words. Our goal is to keep it brief, but poignant. It's going to start, the music starts at 10:30 to draw people over to the main stage area. That program starts at 11. There'll be the national anthem. The Old Guard, the 3rd U.S. Infantry, the Old Guard will be there to present the colors. They will also, per protocol, play taps. There'll be speakers. That's the big program. That hopefully will end around 12:15. Depending on who is speaking. And by the way, who's coming? I can't tell you that. I don't really know. We've sent out lots of invitations, but sometimes these invitations don't come back. Confirmations don't come back, sometimes up to the last minute. So it really is, I'm not hiding anything from you. I really don't know. And I don't expect to know anytime soon. But I can tell you that everybody's been invited. I mean, the executive protocol from the director of the Park Service, Secretary of the Interior, all the Virginia delegation, yes, the president, everybody's been invited, and we'll just have to wait and see who accepts. We don't know. Like I said, we probably won't know till the last minute in some cases. That program hopefully ends at 12:15. There'll be taps, and then there's a little bit of a break in the action. In the afternoon, from about 1:30 to 3, there's another big program at the McLean House. Why? Because, real time, this is the Lee Grant meeting at the house. The meeting. There'll be a small riser set up outside the house there. Again, there'll be, I feel pretty certain that that's where Dr. Bud Robertson's going to be. Dr. Edward Ayers from University of Richmond will be involved in that program. There'll be some descendants from some of the key players that were historically involved at that point. Talking about the meeting, its significance, the terms, all of that. And it's going to build up. There'll be another crescendo, kind of an anticipation to that 3 o'clock moment. 3 o'clock is so significant. In fact, I would say that's ground zero of everything we're doing. Of all 5 days, it's 3 o'clock on the 9th. That's the moment that Lee and Grant and some of the staff members that are with them will come out of the McLean House. Now, something else we're doing during this 5 days is unveiling a new film that we're making. The actual filming was done last July. We have actors that portray Lee and Grant and some of the other key figures. They will be back in April to portray Lee and Grant again, and they're going to come out of the McLean House at 3 o'clock, reenact Lee's departure from the McLean House, including the horses. Lee and 2 other Confederates that are with him will ride out of the house, turn to the right, and head back toward the final bivouac of the Army of Northern Virginia, northeast of the village. As he does so, a small federal brass band across the street from the McLean House will strike up Auld Lang Syne, which is historically what happened, and he leaves. We're going to do something kind of unique this time, though, for those that were here for the 125th or for the centennial. Right outside the McLean House, there will be a bell. I'm really excited about this because we were always looking for a way to make this connection, and hopefully we've found a way to do it. Actually, we didn't find it. It was another park ranger from Cedar Creek Battlefield, another national park site, approached us and said, do you think it would be okay if at just after 3 o'clock on the 9th, if there was a bell that would be rung at the McLean House signifying that the fighting was done, and that then that bell would reverberate to other battlefield parks all around the Civil War landscape. And you know, we can quite easily include all the other national park battlefield sites, which is a really important list of places. Cold Harbor, the Wilderness, Gettysburg, Antietam, Manassas. We really liked the idea because although there are 95,000 soldiers in Appomattox on April 9th, 1865, and that is where the war ends for most of them, the fact is there are hundreds of thousands of soldiers that the war ended somewhere else. They don't make it to Appomattox. Most don't make it to Appomattox. So it seems appropriate that there's some connection between Appomattox and all of these other fields. And so that'll happen a few minutes after 3 o'clock. I think it is too. I really like that. Appomattox is a culmination of many other tragic events. It's not isolated. It shouldn't be thought of that way. So that marks the last big thing on the 9th. And I'm going to just go through the other big things on the other days for the sake of time. If you want to come up afterwards and ask more detailed questions, let's do that. But the metal chairs are going to start talking here soon. On April the 10th, the big historical thing on the 10th, nothing as big as the Lee Grant meeting on the 9th. But Lee and Grant do meet on the 10th. They have a short meeting on, well, it's not even that short, but they have a meeting, a lesser known meeting on horseback on the east end of the village. We are going to reenact that. Very simple. They're just on horseback and they talk. Lots of people see it. Nobody's allowed to hear the contents of the conversation. In truth, that's historically how it happened. We'll have our historian, Patrick Schroeder, do about a 30-minute program about that while watching Lee and Grant on the same spot where they were 150 years ago, talking about the things that we think we understand about that conversation and its significance. The other thing that happened on the 10th that's very important was the printing of parole passes. That began. Per the terms, the Confederates are going to go home without going to prison. In order to do that, they need to be paroled. It was decided by Lee and Grant on during that conversation on the 10th, it is believed, because of what happened right after that conversation, that individual parole passes, pieces of paper, needed to be created and filled out to the individual Confederate soldiers. Over 28,000 of them were distributed to the individual men so they can begin their trips back to Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, Arkansas, and other parts of Virginia, even other parts of Appomattox. There are local boys in Lee's army at this time too. So that will happen in the Clover Hill Tavern, the printing of the parole presses. In fact, that's one of the stations you can sign up to be part of. We're going to be printing paroles all 5 days and explaining to people why we're doing it and why it was important. It's a hands-on kind of thing. That happened on the 10th. Also, Confederate cavalry was formally surrendered on the 10th. We will have a program to mark that occasion as well. Now, on the evening of the 10th, we're doing one of the most unique things that we've ever done on many levels for any commemoration. On the evening of the 10th, we're going to recognize a story that has largely been overlooked over the decades. In Appomattox, on the fighting of the morning of April the 9th, there is one known civilian casualty. Her name was Hannah Reynolds. She lived about a mile west of the McLean house along the stage road. Parallels modern Highway 24. If you're familiar with Grant's headquarters, if you were to leave out the town of Appomattox and head out to the park, Grant's headquarters is on your right. Over on your left is woods. But in those woods is the old corridor of the stage road and remnants of the old Coleman place. Dr. Samuel Coleman lived there. There was a woman named Hannah Reynolds that was enslaved by the Colemans, and she, unfortunately, and her husband were on the property on the morning of April the 9th. The Colemans had left when the armies approached. They came down here to a place called Redfields. It's an abbot place. It still stands. That's where they were. But Hannah and her husband were still at the house. They happened to be right in the middle of the battlefield on the morning of April the 9th. Nobody could have known that. Bad luck. Bad timing, wrong place, wrong time. In fact, the 11th Maine was a regiment that formed right around the home place there. And because they were there, they were receiving Confederate artillery from the village. It was firing in that direction. One of the shells came into the building where Hannah was and went right through her arm. It's an awful wound. We always assumed that she probably died that day. It was recently discovered by Reverend Alfred Jones, those who might know him locally, quite a historian. He found Hannah Reynolds' death certificate. This just happened. I'm talking in the last couple of months. Found the death certificate, and turns out she died April the 12th. How could somebody linger 3 days with an artillery shell that had gone through their arm? Well, the answer is the 24th Corps Flying Hospital. That's what they called it back then. Later, we call those MASH units. Another one of the innovations of the Civil War. The idea that if you can set up a mobile hospital right on the battlefield, you can save more lives. See, remember, we're the end of the war. We benefit from all that technology, repeating weapons, flying hospitals. The 24th Corps set up a hospital right outside the Coleman House. A Dr. Williams, a surgeon, actually tended to Hannah. Probably explains why she lingered for 3 days. What does that have to do with April the 10th? Well, this year on April the 10th, we're going to have a living history program at the main stage site on the evening of the 10th. This is a twilight program. We have a long tradition of first-person living history in our park. We don't feel we can do much of it during the 150th because of the large numbers and all the anachronisms that will be around the village. But we're going to do this one. We're going to introduce people to this program and turn it over, and it'll be 1865. And what you're going to witness is the funeral of Hannah Reynolds. Her husband will be there. There will be a preacher to deliver a eulogy. There'll be a horse-drawn wagon bringing the coffin in. The coffin will be delivered. The service will be held. There'll be a small choir. Reverend Jones is doing a lot of research on African American burials of the mid-19th century, which are very simple. And we'll try to capture that to the best of our ability. At the end of that service, as the coffin is returned back to the wagon will begin to roll west in the direction of Hannah's earthly home. As that happens, 100+ choir will rise up and will begin singing Amazing Grace, and will invite the audience to join in. Everyone will move out to the road, or is at least invited to move out to the road, and begin lighting 4,600 luminaries that will run through the village. That seems like an arbitrary number, but it's not. But it does require lots of volunteers. We don't know how many enslaved people were in Appomattox on April the 9th or 10th, 1865. Well, the idea here, of course, is the meeting resulted in emancipation. That's one of the legacies of the surrender. In 1860, though, we do know that there were 4,600 enslaved souls in Appomattox that will become emancipated as a result of the event that occurred on April the 9th, 1865. When we started this idea, and I say we, the Carver Price Legacy Museum, the National Park Service, the idea was that Hannah perhaps would symbolize the last person in the United States of America to ever die a slave. From 1619 all the way to 1865. Thanks to Reverend Jones's research, she actually didn't die enslaved. She lived till the 12th. She actually saw emancipation. Originally, we were going to have 4,599 luminaries. Now we're going to have 4,600. And I'm sure we'll think of a way to light that 4,600 light in an appropriate way. But it is one of the many legacies and meanings of Appomattox. And the night of April the 10th is called the Footsteps to Freedom program. And we think it's going to be big. It's definitely going to be special. And the thing to also know about it is, if there is bad weather on the night of the 10th, we will do it on the 11th. It has a rain date. And that is important, because again, it's April. And although it's going to be 75 and sunny all day, if we get inclement weather that evening, we will move it to the night of the 11th.
It's 75 now?
Yeah, that's right.
75?
Oh, yeah,
You keep
what's
going up
65
now.
now? The optimism keeps coming. Okay, so that's Footsteps to Freedom on the night of the 10th. Shuttles will run that night. So that's one of the nights we'll run the shuttles late. Because again, this program starts about 6:30. So that the service is still in the twilight, but when it comes time to light the luminaries, the sun is going down and we have the effect. We've never had luminaries in the park, by the way. Lots of parks do it. Antietam, Andersonville, Petersburg. We've never done it here. So this is a first on many levels. On to the 11th. Yes, sir.
Will the luminaries be put out ahead of time?
Yes, by volunteers.
Yes. That's what we did at Cole Hopper.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
And the luminaries are not candles, they're little LEDs, so we don't have to send people out.
And
Yeah, yeah. We want kids involved. We want kids involved. And if it's raining, it would ruin it. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, we've gotten scout groups that have contacted us that want to be a part of it, and this is one of the ways that we want to get the kids involved, young people. and the entire community. This is about inclusion, this event really, obviously. And so we thought about the candles versus the LED. The other thing was, Andersonville already has lots of these LEDs, and we're gonna borrow them from Andersonville. And then we're gonna buy the rest that match, and anyway. But I think in the end, yeah, on some spiritual level, I'd like to see the real candles, but in reality, to make sure this thing goes off and to get kids involved, I think the LEDs were the way to go.
Because Ernie, it's gonna be dry anyway, because it's gonna be
Yeah, that's
65.
right, even though it's gonna be sunny and 75. Okay, so let's move on. Let's wrap out the 11th and the 12th and then open up for questions. The 11th is Saturday. Now, like the 8th, the 11th historically is another really kind of a down day. There aren't really any big, huge things that happen on the 11th. However, it is Saturday. So we think that will still be a really busy day, even though it's not a big commemorative day. Now, on the 11th, you have the continuation of the printing of the paroles. And by the way, when the coffin from the night before rolls down the road along through the luminaries heading in the westerly direction, it's going to pass by the Clover Hill Tavern. And there will be federal soldiers at the Clover Hill Tavern that are printing out parole passes. Because historically, that's what they did the night of April the 10th. And when they print these, the paper, if it's moist, it prints better. That's how they did it.